It's Rod Blagojevich. You know, he's free, just free. And he's telling the media that he's a freed political prisoner, and he vows to actually reform the broken criminal justice system. So what do we think about this?
This news broke yesterday morning that he was going to get out. He was going to be freed. He was going to get the clemency from the president. Then last night it happened. We were sitting here just 24 hours ago saying, well, we wonder how quickly it's going to happen. And sure enough, by the evening news, Chuck Gowdy is at the airport in Denver, Colorado, with the governor who's signing autographs and shaking hands. He's coming out just the way he went in.
Yep, exactly.
Of course, you know, he is a people's man, and he was still defiant and said that he has been lied on and that he is not guilty of the things that he was convicted of. He held a press conference this morning with about 30 camera crews and folks out there, and I want you to listen what he said about his situation in prison.
For most of my time there, my home was a 6 foot by 12 foot, a 6 foot by 8 foot prison cell with 4 cement walls, a big heavy iron door that can shut you in, a small window with bars on it, and a bunk bed. I slept on the top bunk. Often late at night, I would look through that window and past those bars out into the night sky, and I'd think of home. I think of my children. I think of Patty.
Wow, so he was not expected to get out until March of 2024. Of course, he was convicted of trying to sell former President Barack Obama's Senate seat, as well as shaking down executives from a hospital. Ro, I know you have been talking about this ad nauseum on your radio show. What are your thoughts?
Well, okay.
Where do you begin?
You know, what's interesting is how many people were out supporting him there, and then there was some applause in here when we announced that he was free. I think people are getting caught in the character of Rod Blagojevich as opposed to the actions of Rod Blagojevich. And if you listen to Rod Blagojevich today, he's a man of God. He's a man of Donald Trump now. He's a Trumpocrat. He believes that Donald Trump is the greatest president ever because of what he's doing for criminal justice reform, and specifically in his case. But what you have to juxtapose that with were his own words on the tapes. His own words on the tapes of trying to create a value for the Senate seat. What would it be? Who should get it? How he could screw over Barack Obama.
It's golden.
By using it. It's effing golden, right? I mean, all of those things, and trying to figure out how much does it pay? Maybe he should take it. Those kinds of things. Now you got to remember, on the appeal, part of that Senate seat piece was taken off. But he wasn't resentenced to less time, because the judges decided in his appeal he could have done 60 years in prison for what he did, because he's a man of power. There's a difference between people who are getting locked up, 17-year-olds who are getting locked up for marijuana charges, or the woman who was just recently freed also by Donald Trump, who was locked up for life on a non-violent drug charge, right? Okay, so there's a difference between them and the most powerful man in the state of Illinois. Or the most powerful man in the United States of America. And that's the difference. The difference is breaking the public trust. We voted for him, or the majority of people voted for him to become governor, and he violated that trust. There has to be a penalty. And had he said, I promise you this, had he, after the first trial, in which there was a hung jury, there was one juror that stayed out, if he had come back and he pleaded out, he would have done 2 years, 4 years tops.
Well, even today, he's sounding defiant.
Yes.
He's not surrendering at all, not acknowledging that anything was wrong. It actually sounded like a campaign speech to me.
It did. Right. Well, he can't run for office in the state of Illinois. Because after he was impeached, that was it. But
is there any chance that he could be appointed to some kind of office in Donald Trump's administration?
Well, he would have to. I think he has to get a full pardon because he's still technically a felon.
But couldn't the president do that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, I mean, he might. I mean, he would have to do that. If he's going to take him into the cabinet, he's definitely going to pardon him. And there is an argument that he could run for Congress, but I think that could be challenged.
Yeah.
Well, he owes a lot to Patty, because she went on this tour on Fox News and pleading for him and talking directly to President Trump, talking about how he really needs to be out and the difficulties with the family and so forth. So, you know, he got to tip his hat to her.
I think he's definitely playing on the public sympathy in terms of being away from his family, his girls, and one was 8 when, you know, he went in. Now she's 16. The other one's on her way to 2 years from having her master's degree. But I was thinking about this yesterday, the timing of this clemency? Because this has been talked about now. The president has flirted with this idea for some time now. As a matter of fact, I heard in one of these reports that there was even talk that this was going to happen in November before the impeachment trial, and then that had to be on hold. Do you think this was, of course it's all strategic, but why now did the president do this versus any of the other times? I mean, we do have the whole Roger Stone thing going on.
Tomorrow.
Is this a deflection?
No, it's a setup. Because there were 11 people. I mean, we're talking about Blagojevich because we know him, right? But there was Bernie Kerik, who was the former New York City police chief, who ended up doing 4 years for fraud, right? And then you've got, you got Michael Milken, who bilked people out of billions of dollars, and it's just, you know, it's friends, it's people, it's friends of friends. That's what's going on here, and what you're going to see happen, I think, is that when Roger Stone is sentenced, and I think he'll probably be sentenced to somewhere around 5 years tomorrow, when he is sentenced to that, within a week, he's going to pardon him, he'll pardon Michael Flynn, and he may pardon Paul Manafort, too.
Yep.
Wow.
It's going to be a flurry of pardons going on. He's gonna,
and they will all come out and say the same thing, because they're all saying the same. I mean, we had Robert Blagojevich on the radio yesterday, the brother, and the brother was talking about the fact that this is all about James Comey and Pat Fitzgerald, who was the U.S. attorney during the prosecution here, and that they're best friends, and it's all about Rob Mueller. It goes back to those guys. It's a deep state. They were out to get Rod Blagojevich just the way they were out to get Donald Trump. Now, when they got Rod Blagojevich, no one in America, including Donald Trump, thought he was ever going to be president of the United States.
Right.
Has nothing to do with that. And so this deflection and this confusion and all that they're trying to do here is they're hiding behind, he's hiding behind God. He's hiding behind I mean, I'm glad. If he's a religious man, I appreciate and I respect that. But please don't drag God into what you did wrong. Say you want forgiveness. That's what God is about, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I am really surprised that there was no sense of humility or anything whatsoever. I thought maybe the 8 years would have made him, you know, take that humble pill, as people say, just a little bit of it, even if it was just a half of it. But we didn't see that at all. You mentioned Trumpocrat. Hear from Rod Blagojevich and what he has to say about that.
So again, on behalf of Patty and Amy and Annie and me, we want to again express our deepest gratitude to President Trump. Like I said, as a Republican president and a Democratic governor, he didn't have to do this. But President Trump is not a typical politician.
That's right.
He's tough, he's outspoken, he gets things done. He's a problem solver in a business where too many politicians don't want to solve problems. All they want to do is play politics and get nothing done for the people. He's got I'm a Trumpocrat.
The Trumpocrats, that's right.
Are you going to vote every time?
If I have the ability to vote, I'm going to vote for him.
Would he be saying that same thing if he had not been let out?
No.
No, he would not, right?
No.
Well, you gotta, there's a play devil's advocate. A lot of people do think he got too much time.
Too much time.
For not actually
And
doing
we've said that on the show. We said he should have done some time.
We got to throw that disclaimer in again.
No, I'm sure that's true. And by the way, we should also point out for people who are not familiar with this, he had cut himself shaving, which is why you see him dabbing at his chin.
He said he finally had a decent razor. He hasn't had a decent razor in 8 years, so he was shaving this morning. And I'd like to point out, I made a bet that with some colleagues that he would color his hair before this morning's press conference. And if you look closely, yes, it is still salt and pepper, but it is not as white as last night. I believe he did round one of Just for Men. Yes,
Only
I won.
5 minutes, not 15.
Right. He couldn't let it sit on too long because he had to get ready for the press conference. But I believe he put a little bit of color in there because I saw some highlights and lowlights in there.
Well, Chuck Gowdy was saying, too, that he was so happy he had some decent shoes on. Because he runs a mile, I guess, every day in the prison yard, and he had those hard shoes, and that really hurt his feet. And so he kept touching his shoes on the airplane as a symbol that, you know, he can't believe he's really been set free.
I mean,
let's talk about Chuck Gowdy.
Yes.
Chuck Gowdy, right here, ABC7's own I-Team Chuck Gowdy has been on this. I mean, when I turned on the news and saw him at the Denver, I'm like, wait, how did he get there so fast? Not only was he there, but he was also sitting next to him on the plane ride back. So you could only imagine, and we've heard a little bit of what Chuck Gowdy has been reporting from that conversation.
Well, that's what Chuck does.
Well, that is the most amazing thing I have seen in this story, is that Chuck Gowdy not only gets to Denver in time to get him at the airport, he sits next to him on the flight. I mean, I can't sit next to my kids on a flight. So that is like, that's a whole deal.
I love the picture I had a picture of him with him. That's great.
Yeah. And then there was a lot of credit given to Marc Vargas, who showed up on the scene 2 years ago and just said, hey, you know, they had no publicist, Patty and Rod, you know, and hey, you guys need somebody to kind of work for you with the connections that he has at the White House and whatnot.
Well,
I'm sure you guys talked about that too, Ro.
I mean, it's a very personal. I mean, what we're seeing here is there's a part of the White House that just operates based on what's best for the president at any given moment, right? May not be what's best for justice or best for the country, but what he thinks is going to be best. Is it best for the country? Remember, in this Roger Stone case, this trial, it was a jury conviction. Jury came back in 7 hours on a complicated case. Guilty across the board. Now, that's not, again, and there's stuff that, some of it has nothing to do with Trump. So the question is, is justice being served if people who may have committed crimes that were beneficial at the time, like Michael Cohen did, who's now in jail, or Michael Flynn attempted to do, or Paul Manafort did, that were beneficial to him at the time, is it okay for them to get out because they helped the president, because he's got the power to do that? I mean, what are we saying about American rule of law here?
Lots of questions about the Justice Department right now as well, and what's going to happen going forward with Barr there acting, some people say, you know, as almost an arm of the presidency.
But he may be leaving. He may. I mean, now there's talk that he's even tiring of this because it's making him look bad, right? well,
some people say even that was orchestrated, though.
Well, we thought it was a pillow
his
fight.
Outrage, you know, last week.
But now there seems to be more indication that there are other people coming forward to say inside his inner circle, and it's continuing. And if it were just a pillow fight for last week, just for our consumption, then I think this would have gone away by now. But what you have is this raft of you know, these commutations and pardons. Now the next question is, when's the next raft? And I think he's just setting us up. This is what we're going to be. Now, and the other thing too is he's daring the public. Right? It's not just daring the politicians to stand up against him. He's daring the public to say, all right, listen, this is who I am. You know who I am. And if you reelect me, I'm not changing, right? I'm going to continue with this and maybe take it even further. I mean, who knows? It's very autocratic to me. And it's very disconcerting because I don't think I don't think he's really paying attention to the Constitution as much as he is to his own interests.
What's next for Rod Blagojevich? Like, what does he do? Like,
for sure, he will be on the campaign trail for Trump. He will be on Fox News Channel. He is going to be a darling of the MAGA movement because he's already there.
Well, and the thing is, Trump struggles in the African-American community with his numbers, right? And Rod Blagojevich is beloved by the African-American community.
Some of them.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that's completely true, but
I would venture out there. I mean, look at that press conference today.
He
had two brothers standing right next to him, echoing and amen and everything he said. So I do believe that some, I don't know if it's the majority of the African-American community here in Chicago, but you do know on the South and West Side, he is beloved. Because, I mean, you had a civil rights activist woman out there, older black lady today, said, if he runs tomorrow, I'm organizing this, that, and the other, and campaigning and doing this because
people still
he
see him
took care of their community.
An underdog, too. A lot of people see that and see that as championing their causes because he is an underdog.
Let me ask you just one question. I want one question answered. At Children's Memorial Hospital 8 years ago, were there black children that in that hospital whose actual state Medicaid payments were being held up because he wanted a $50,000 fundraiser in order to release those payments?
Touché.
If you are mad, if you're mad about Donald Trump holding up the Ukrainian aid, you should be mad at Rod Blagojevich, much more mad at him, because those are our children here in Chicago, and those are children who don't have insurance and can't afford the least afford it. So don't tell me that he's a great friend of the minority community.
Yeah, well, I definitely hear you, and we've talked about that on the show, and I think that's one of the things that was so icky about this is that, you know, the Barack Obama Senate seat was one thing, but the fact that you want to hold up this money for the children's hospital for little kids who are sick because of that.
Little kids, because it's Medicaid money. It's state Medicaid money to reimburse.
Well, y'all know I can't express opinions, right?
Right. Yeah, I know Looks like the worst day to be here.
I'm holding on because you can't express opinions. But
I got you.
there are some strong.
Yeah, I think you got him.
Go, Rod. There are a lot of people who have some strong opinions, and we're going to see this in the next few days as well, because it's going to play out. It's not over.
It is far from over.
Just because he's
Well,
out.
listen, here, we got a couch over there. Rod, Patty, family, whoever want to come sit down and talk. We got a whole hour. You want an hour to say your thing and be questioned? We got it right there. We'll make sure Ro is here. But for right now, we got to say big thanks to Ro. Make sure you catch him later on WGN AM Radio. Needless to say, I wonder what you're going to be talking about today.